Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing really well and enjoying the holiday season. As we come to the end of 2020, I thought it might be fun to look back at some of my favorite memories of the year and my top 5 favorite images. This is like easy like heaven.
Waterfall tip number 4. Use a circular polarizer.
Might not get a picture with this light, so try to get a So it can be kind of difficult to pick favorite images, and I don't always like to pick favorites. But I thought it might be fun to look back at what I really like about these images, what I don't like so much, what I would do differently next time, and hopefully it'll give you a little insight in how I think about taking these images, how I think about processing these images, and really for me, what's important in an image. So coming in at number 5 for me is this waterfall in western North Carolina called Log Hollow Falls. It's actually from the on-location shoot of the first YouTube video I ever made. And because of that, it makes this image that much more special to me. So when I first walked up to this waterfall, the first thing I thought was there was this kind of main waterfall in the background that was kind of the main subject. And I thought most people would probably walk up, see this main waterfall, and that would be their image. They would kind of fill the frame with that main subject, and that would be that. So I wanted to come up with something a little bit different. So I kind of wandered back down the waterfall, down this stream a little ways, to kind of look for a foreground that I could use to add a little extra, add something unique to the image. And I stumbled across this log here, and it just had these fantastic orange and yellow and red leaves laying on the rocks and the logs, and they were just, and that was really the reason I was there. The fall colors were spectacular, and I really liked this log and the leaves on it. And along with this log here, I really liked these smaller kind of little mini waterfalls in the foreground. I thought they were great leading lines, great to walk your eye through the image up to that main waterfall. And I really thought they just added something, some depth to the image and just a little dimension. And that's actually the title of the on-location shoot here, was creating dimension in landscape photography. And a lot of these images are from on-location shoots, and I'll make sure to link all those videos when I put up the images. So that's really what I like most about this image, is the composition. I feel that the composition here is really strong with that foreground leading up to that waterfall. Now there are a couple of things that I don't really like about this, or things that I found challenging. The first being this fallen tree here. And for me, a lot of the compositions that I really liked, that fallen tree was a little bit distracting. So I wanted to find a composition where that tree was not crossing that main waterfall or kind of interfering with my foreground, somewhere that it wasn't going to be too distracting. And I felt that this composition did a good job of that. You don't really notice that tree. You're kind of more focused on that foreground and then the waterfall there as the main subject. The other thing about this image that I would maybe hope for something different was the light. The light here was pretty flat. It was really early in the morning. I was kind of trying to avoid that bright, kind of harsh daylight that would create kind of hot spots on waterfalls. Waterfalls aren't very friendly for really sunny days. So I was just shooting really early in the morning. But a little bit more dynamic light, or maybe a little atmosphere, a little fog, would kind of help create that depth, and I wouldn't have to kind of post-process as heavily with dodging and burning and try to create that depth and dimension in post-processing. Although I think the composition does do a lot for the dimension of this photo with that foreground leading up to that waterfall. So yeah, obviously things that I would like to change about this image, but overall it's special to me. I think it's a great composition. It was my first YouTube video. I'll always kind of remember that with this image. So definitely in my top 5. Number 4 is from another fairly recent on-location shoot that I did down at Boneyard Beach near Charleston, South Carolina. And this image, I think, is a good reminder of it's good to plan and have expectations, but you need to be adaptable and not necessarily stick to those expectations, because you'll get stuck and you won't come away with an image that you like. So I headed down to Boneyard Beach just after we had a tropical storm blow through, with the intent of photographing some really dramatic storm light at sunrise. And as you can see by this image, that didn't really happen for me. Well, that's not entirely true. It actually did happen. We did get this fantastic storm light. But if you've watched that video, you'll know that there's a marsh between kind of where you park and the beach. And with the tropical storm, we had a really high tide and kind of flood waters, and I couldn't actually get to the beach. So I missed all this dramatic storm light, and it was absolutely killing me. But when I finally did get to the beach, I was left with this really kind of moody clouds, kind of a monochromatic scene. And the first thing that came to my mind was, well, I'm not going to get this dramatic storm light that I was hoping for, but I might be able to come up with some really soothing, peaceful, calm, almost fine art type pieces. And that's really what I was going for here. I found this tree kind of out in the water, and I really liked it. I like kind of the arrangement of the branches on the tree, so I really focused on it. I probably have like 5,000 images of this single tree. But here the composition was fairly simple. I stuck this tree on my left third. I had the horizon on my bottom third. And for me to balance this image, I felt like I needed something on this right third. So I set up my tripod and I was waiting for a wave. I thought a wave would perfectly balance that tree and really just bring about the balance, the peace, the calm in this image. It's not too chaotic. It's really soothing. Overall, just a really simple, soothing image. And I probably waited about 20 minutes for a wave to come through there. It finally did, and I'm just really happy with this image. I think it really worked out. It's really well balanced. Definitely one of my favorites of the year. Now, I'm not going to give up on that kind of stormlight sunrise dream, though, because I do think that would still be a really cool image. But it's important to remember that you don't always have to stick with that kind of initial plan that you have. Be adaptable, and you can still come away with some great images. And that's why I have this at number 4 on my list. All right, number 3 here is actually just down the road from Boneyard Beach at a place called Botany Bay. And this is kind of the entrance road to Botany Bay. And this is one of those images, it's really fun to have to hike and work for an image, and it makes them that much more special. But this image wasn't that. I was driving down this kind of sandy road, and you're driving through this live oak tunnel. And it's the most obvious composition in the world. You just pull over to the side of the road, stick your tripod in the middle of the road, and you're like, wow, I have to take this picture. And that's what I did. I waited to make sure there weren't any cars going by. I set up, and the composition here is simple. I have this road kind of as my leading line off into the distance. Your eyes just kind of follow down that tunnel, and it's super simple. Really, the only thing I was thinking about was the sky. And that's one thing I don't like about this particular image, actually, is I have a couple of these bright spots of sky in this image that I was really trying to eliminate. And I'm not a big Photoshop person, so I'm not going to really Photoshop those pieces of sky out. But that being said, on location, I wanted to use a longer focal length, because when you use a longer focal length, you really get this nice lens compression. And by using that compression, you're taking out a lot of those brighter pieces of sky and really creating that depth in the image. And this was a great opportunity to do that. That being said, so I shot this at 70 millimeters. I would love to shoot it a little bit longer. So when I go back, which I do plan on doing, maybe with a little bit of fog, or maybe in the spring. This was taken in the fall. I feel like the spring might be a little more dense of a canopy, maybe a little bit darker tunnel. So that spring with some fog, I can imagine would be really, really cool. But I think I would love to shoot it at maybe 100, 150, 200, somewhere in there, where we even get a little bit more of that compression, and I don't have to worry about that sky at all. Another thing I want to note about this image, it's actually one of my more popular images on social media, but I want to emphasize that that's not always the case. A lot of my favorite images are not everyone else's favorite images, especially on social media. I think it's important to note not to value your work based on how things do on social media. Value your work based on how you feel about it, how the work you put into it, and how it felt taking the picture, and are you happy with it? And that's really how you should be valuing your work, not based on how many likes it's getting on Instagram, but rather the work and the process that went into it that you know. But all that being said, this is one of my favorite images, and that's why it's number 3 on here. All right, so number 2 on this list is actually an image that I haven't shown anyone yet. And it's just a couple days ago, and it's of the Great Conjunction, which was the alignment of Jupiter and Saturn. And their alignment was, I believe it was about 1/5 of the diameter of the moon. So I drove about an hour and a half down this really bumpy gravel back road to this ridge above Lake Jocassee near Greenville, South Carolina. And I was really hoping, I had this massive plan in my head that I had gone over and over about trying to capture the Great Conjunction, and I needed clear skies and all this sort of stuff, and the timing had to be just right. And when I got to where I wanted to take the photo from, we had clear skies, everything was lining up, I was getting really excited, and I kind of came out to this cliff edge, and we had 30-mile-an-hour winds right in my face, and I was like, oh no, this is, for astro stuff, you need a long exposure. This is going to be really tricky with this strong wind. I'm not going to get things sharp. And for me, that, those difficulties made some of the stuff in this image not exactly work for me, and that's like the noise in the foreground and things like that. But for me, that's not what makes this image. That was a difficulty, and the technical aspects of this image are not my favorite. But to me, this image is about the story and the composition. And the story here is that we have this alignment of Saturn and Jupiter in the night sky, the closest it's been in 800 years, the only time I'm going to see something like this in my lifetime. The sun has just dropped, this star, this alignment of Jupiter and Saturn has just come up, and it's just really representative of these fleeting moments in life that a lot of the time pass us by. So the story this image tells, I think, is the best I've done in 2020 in terms of telling a story with an image. So for me, that's what makes this number 2 on the list and one of my favorite images. Another thing I really like about this is the composition. I'm really proud of this composition. So what was important for me was to have this gap in the bottom. I like, when you have a subject in an image, it's nice to have a little bit of buffer room around that subject. So I like that little bit of buffer room there. That was important. This curve here, I also wanted a little bit of buffer just to make sure that lake is comfortably in the image. And if you've noticed a little trend from my horizontal images in the previous 5 and including this one, I love a 16:9. It kind of has that pano look without being a true pano. So then obviously, so we got that little bit of buffer room. I like the way the lake is positioned. Obviously we have the Great Conjunction there. And it was kind of tracking in the sky on this kind of arc coming down to the horizon. So I wanted to time it right, so that the lake here was almost like a little arrow pointing up to that star, and I believe I did. That was the perfect timing there. I took a lot of images as it was coming down to ensure that I got the timing right, but I love that composition there. I love the story it tells, and for me that overcomes the technical parts of this image and maybe the noise and things and sharpness that I'm not as happy with. It's the story, the composition that make this number 2 on my list, and definitely one of my favorite images of 2020. All right, so number 1 of my favorite images of 2020. And now this image might not be everyone's favorite, but for me it takes the cake for a couple reasons. The first being the subject matter. I love woodland photography. I find it's the time where I can be most relaxed, most at peace, just wandering around the woods. You have all the time in the world to capture images, come up with different compositions, challenge yourself, and create an image that's impactful, or that you believe will be impactful with your audience. So for me, the result of an image is important, but it's also about the process, right? And if the process is enjoyable and you remember that process, that makes it that much better. Kind of like I was talking about with the Great Conjunction and Log Hollow Falls earlier. So the process here for me was just so relaxing, so peaceful, and so enjoyable. But I do love the subject and the final result as well. So here the composition for me was simple. I had this just massive, gnarly live oak, just absolutely fantastic, and I wanted those arms to just be engulfing you. And kind of like I said before with that Botany Bay tree tunnel road, I didn't want the bright sky to be in this image. So I was focused on having that nice lens compression, make sure I didn't have the sky in the image, and all we have is this solid woods in the background with a little bit of fog, and it just adds that atmosphere, that kind of dreamy look to it. And it's funny, I remember when I took this image and I got it back and I started to post-process it, I was almost nervous to edit this image because I didn't want to do anything to it. I just loved it so much. And that's kind of silly because you can always undo and edit or redo it or whatever. But so I've barely done anything to this. A little bit of color enhancement, maybe a little bit of minor Orton effect in the background there, just to add to that, kind of emphasize that dreamy look. But when I took this image, I knew it. I was in love with this one. This is definitely, it's hard to pick favorites, and I don't like to, but this is my favorite image of 2020. This one makes it for me. So that'll do it for my top 5 images of 2020. And the thing about those 5 images that really sticks out in my mind is that all of those 5 images are accompanied with an on-location video that I made for YouTube. And honestly, making YouTube videos has really changed the photographic experience for me, and you might think it might distract from the photo taking, having to deal with these videos and talk to the camera and things like that, but it's made it that much better for me. I love talking to the camera about what I'm doing. It makes me think, it makes me kind of question what I'm doing. Maybe I'm saying something to the camera about a composition. I'm like, well, why the heck am I doing that anyways, So it makes me think a little bit more, and it really just makes the process that much more engaging. And I only just recently started YouTube, so talking to the camera is a new thing for me. It's really challenging, but it's something I really enjoy. And like I said, it's made that photographic process that much more enjoyable. So that'll do it for this one. I really do appreciate you taking the time to watch, as always, and I hope you're enjoying the holiday season, even if everything does look a little bit different this year. There's a chance this is my last video of 2020. I'm not exactly sure yet, but if it is, have a great new year, stay safe, and I'll see you all in 2021. Thanks. Bye.
I made an old man. I said, tell me your story. He took out a notepad.